Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show we round up all the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. We've just completed the Las Vegas Grand Prix weekend, but which stories have been making the headlines this week? This week we explain the growing feud between Franco Colapinto and Lance Stroll, the rumours of Christian Horner's F1 return is intensifying after he was spotted in New York City, and of course we bring you our review of the Las Vegas Grand Prix at the end of the show as well. Find out all about that and a whole lot more today on the F1 News Zone. If you're watching on YouTube, skip to the timestamps in the video description to watch the story that you're most interested in. So without further ado, let's dive in. So things have gone a bit quiet with Christian Horner over these last few weeks. Not really much being said about him. Still the rumours about him coming back to Formula 1, with the leading rumour being that he's going to try and buy either an entire Formula 1 team, part of a team as an investor, potentially come back as a team principal, but I think he has ambitions of a lot more, to be honest with you. And he was also spotted recently in New York City, posing for pictures with fans, but what was he doing there? Was he on holiday or was he there on business? Let's have a look at the full story here on the F1Chronicle.com, guys, because the rumour mill when it comes to Horner's potential F1 comeback has been absolutely swirling, but there is a very large, awkward elephant in the room, I think, when it comes to Christian Horner, and I think things have to really settle down with that before he can come back, but I'll explain all in this video for you guys. Christian Horner has been seen in New York City this week, sparking fresh speculation about the former Red Bull Racing Team principal's next move as he weighs up a potential return to Formula 1. Horner, who departed Red Bull earlier this year after nearly 2 decades at the helm, shared images from his US trip on social media. Fans quickly noticed the 51-year-old posing for pictures on the streets of Manhattan, marking one of his few public appearances since his exit from the Milton Keynes-based outfit. Since leaving Red Bull in late last summer, I mean, he did leave, yes, but I think he was pushed, to be honest with you, as well, but that's a story we've already covered for you guys here on the channel. Horner has largely kept a low profile, spending time with his family, including wife Jerry, on holidays in Croatia and Scotland. His latest trip to the United States, however, has drawn attention given New York's status as a global business hub and the headquarters of several major F1 investors. According to reports, Horner has already secured significant financial backing for his next motorsport venture. His record at Red Bull, overseeing 8 drivers' championships and 6 constructors' crowns, has made him one of the most successful and influential figures in modern Formula 1. Sources suggest that Horner's next move may not to simply be returning to the pit wall. Instead, he is said to be targeting a CEO-style leadership role, focusing on a team's strategic and commercial direction rather than day-to-day operations. And indeed, that was one of the reasons why Red Bull reportedly got rid of Christian Horner, the leadership there thinking he was getting a bit too big for his boots, because he was the CEO of Red Bull in addition to being the team principal. He was very much an integral cog in pretty much everything when it came to not only the trackside operations but also the business side of the company as well. So for me personally, I don't think he'd come back to be a team principal. I think he wants to be more than that. And that's something that the likes of Bernie Ecclestone have echoed as well. Say what you want about Bernie, and don't worry, I do. But when it comes to that, I think he's actually spot on, to be honest. Crucially, Horner is believed to be seeking equity in an F1 team, either as a minority or majority shareholder, or potentially through the creation of a new team entirely. Backed by investors reportedly capable of funding an outright team purchase, Horner's options are wide-ranging in an era when team valuations have skyrocketed. For example, McLaren, who are the current back-to-back constructors champions, they're valued at around $5 billion US, which is about £4 billion. Mercedes, meanwhile, they're valued at even more. We spoke about them recently in the Toto Wolff video because Mr. Wolff is allegedly wanting to sell some of his stake. And the team is valued at around £4.6 billion, which is around $6 billion US. So even as rich as Horner is, he is nowhere near rich enough to be able to buy an entire Formula 1 team. Yes, he could come on board as a stakeholder, but I think he'd want to be a majority shareholder rather than just invest. And I think he wants more. I think he wants control of the team itself. But which team could it be? Well, it could potentially be a new team. It's understood that Horner has already held discussions with F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali and the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem. speaking about the possibility of entering a new team when the governing body next opens an expression of interest process. Ben Sulayem has previously indicated support for expanding the grid, particularly if a new entrant is backed by a major automotive manufacturer, such as a Chinese manufacturer. And again, I'm pretty sure that is a story that we covered at the time, but I'll just go through the quote here from Ben Sulayem. He said, and I quote, "When we opened the expression of interest in 2023, what was the outcome based on? Due process, competency framework, and fulfilling FIA regulations. If there is a Chinese bid and it meets the requirements, I believe Formula One management would agree because it's about sustaining the business," end quote. And as we've covered here on the channel many times, guys, it's not just convincing Formula One, it's also convincing the FIA. Remember, Andretti, when they were actually entering as Andretti Cadillac rather than Cadillac Racing, when they first tried to enter, they got the approval of the FIA, but the Formula One teams said no. Again, there's all sorts of conspiracy theories around why that is. Again, I'm not going to get into that now, guys, but it is something we've already spoken about on the channel. But eventually, of course, they rebranded it to Cadillac rather than Andretti, and they got in because they got approval from both F1 and the FIA. Hence why Horner is speaking to both the president of the FIA and also the Formula One CEO and president Stefano Domenicali. He knows how this stuff works. He has been on the inside for decades now in Formula One. But potentially, he could well be going with Alpine. There's still rumours about that. Him and Flavio Briatore are pretty good friends. Renault, I believe, would be open to selling the team personally. They say they're not, but I think they are, to be honest. And then there's also the rumours about him going to Aston Martin. But again, I don't really see him doing that because I think Lawrence Stroll wouldn't have him in the team, and I don't think he wants to sell the outfit. I think he's made it very clear, again, a story we covered recently, he's made it very clear, Lawrence Stroll, that he wants to stay in Formula One till he wins the World Championship, and people might laugh at that, but I believe him. I believe that is his ambition. I don't think a man like him gets into Formula One and doesn't want to win the World Championship. You know, he's not there to make up the numbers. I believe he's there till I believe he's going to stay until they win a championship, and they could well do it. They got Adrian Newey at the helm. They got the most important person in Formula One. You could argue there. And one day maybe Max Verstappen as well. But that is a story for a different day. What was Horner doing in New York City? What was Horner doing in New York? What was Horner doing in New York City, guys? What is your money on? Do you think he was there trying to drum up support for a new Formula One team, potentially investing in a current Formula One team and rebranding it? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below on this, guys. I'm sure this is not going to be the end that we hear of it. He's very much trying to get back into F1. I feel like he's going to at least attempt it. Whether he'll be successful or not is another matter. But I think with his connections, his experience, and his reputation, really, let's not talk about his personal reputation, but his business reputation anyway, I think that he will very much be one of the favourites to do that. The one elephant in the room, though, like I mentioned in the intro, the big, horrible, ugly elephant in the room is that court case. You know, that's going to happen next year. That's going to start next year. He is reportedly being sued by the complainant. He was, of course, cleared of all that in 2 investigations by Red Bull Racing. However, it's going to the High Court in London in the UK, and I'd be fascinated to see how that goes. But as it is right now, I think with that looming over him, I don't think any Formula One team is going to want anything to do with Horner. They're going to want to see how that evolves, how that works itself out. Because until that happens, can you imagine if Alpine hired Christian Horner and then the most horrible stuff comes out in that court case? He gets convicted of some horrific crimes, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that could happen. That is a possibility. We don't know all the story when it comes to that. The teams don't know it either. So I think right now, if Horner's going to come back into Formula One, it's going to be with his own team. He's going to need his own team to do that. But the investors might be saying the same thing as well. We don't want anything to do with you until this all gets cleared up. So right now, I think he's going to be in limbo until at least 2027. But we'll see what happens, guys. You have to be really far down the Formula One food chain to be dissed by Lance Stroll. And you have to be in serious trouble as an F1 driver for that diss to actually be quite valid. Now, that very much does apply to what Lance Stroll has recently said in the build-up to the Las Vegas Grand Prix, when he was asked about Franco Colapinto, who he has told to basically focus on scoring a point, which, burn.
Boom, bam, bop, bada bop, boom, pow.
Had to get that in there. Love that little clip of that. It's one of my favourites. But, you know, you can criticise Lance Stroll for all he's worth. And I do. Don't worry about that. I absolutely do. But he has points on the board. Colapinto is on big fat 0. You know, the guy who was meant to be a big upgrade on Jack Doohan. How's that working out for you? Well, not really working out too well. Now, of course, he has signed on again for 2026. He has got a new contract. And, you know, the Alpine is a much worse car than the Aston Martin. You know, that's pretty clear. But Pierre Gasly still manages to score points. Pierre Gasly still manages to score points on a semi-regular basis. You know, he's the one real kind of shining bright spark in that team right now. But let's have a look at what Mr. Strulovich has had to say here. Yes, that is his actual last name, before anybody corrects me on it. Stroll is very much his stage name. But let's have a look here, guys, because, yeah, this is... when I saw this go up, this did make me laugh, I'll be honest. A war of words has broken out between Lance Stroll and Franco Colapinto after the Argentine rookie criticised the Aston Martin's driving during the opening lap crash with Gabriel Bortoleto at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Colapinto, who was just behind the incident, accused Stroll of always taking people out and not looking in the mirrors, claiming that the Canadian left Bortoleto no room and caused the crash. Which, to be honest, is correct. I mean, it was 100% Stroll's fault. It was pretty poor driving from him. I mean, poor Gabby Bortoleto, 2 crashes in his first home race in Formula One. I mean, the first one definitely literally hurt, but yeah, to go out on the first lap in the Grand Prix, that was less than ideal. Stroll will not be a very popular man in Brazil after that. I am certain of that. I don't think he's going to be too popular in Argentina either after what he said here. Stroll hit back ahead of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, suggesting that Colapinto should focus on his own performance rather than pointing fingers, saying, quote, "I heard about it. Maybe he's frustrated and angry with life." How many points does he have in the championship? 0. He should probably focus on his own things and try to score some points this year. End quote. Stroll defended his actions as well, noting that the race stewards issued no penalty and that Bortoleto himself did not blame him for the contact, saying, quote, I spoke with Gabriel after it was racing. Probably Franco should focus on scoring a point or something this year." End quote. When asked about Stroll's remarks, Colapinto downplayed the exchange, admitting his initial comments came in the heat of the moment, saying, quote, "I was emotional after the race. Hopefully it's all good between us." End quote. And I hope it is. But yeah, I don't think it is really, given what Stroll's said there. I mean, like I said, if Stroll's dissing you and what he's saying is actually accurate, you're finished, man. You're finished, you know. Honestly, I just can't believe that. I can't believe that Stroll has slammed Colapinto down, and he's right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Gabby's a very mature man for his age, you know. He's only like 22, I think 21, something like that. So I don't think he's going to let the whole thing blow up. He's not going to have a go at Stroll for that and all that. For what I saw, it did seem as though it was Stroll's fault, I'll be honest. But yeah, I mean, God, that is a burn. That is a real burn. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Should Colapinto stick to the driving and focus on trying to score a point? Should he take a page out of the book of John Elkann and just basically get on with the driving? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below. Viva Las Vegas. Oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about when it comes to this Grand Prix. Not just the stuff that is happening on track. Not just the stuff that happened on track, but also the stuff that is currently happening right now as I speak off the circuit itself, because we are still up in the air about the results for this race and also how they will affect the championship. I will go into all of that and a whole lot more in this video, guys. But like I said, right now, the big decision that you've probably heard about, that is not decided yet at the time of recording. But we had a race at 4 a.m. I was not watching it live. I was not up that early. I was up at 6 a.m. this morning, which is pretty good for a Sunday, I must say. But not quite up early enough to catch it live. P5. I have caught the highlights, and don't worry, I've seen everything that's been happening off the track since then, because we've got a lot to talk about. But let's talk about this, guys. Let's go through it. 2025 Las Vegas Grand Prix review. Now, the first thing that we learned is that Lando Norris's incredible streak of getting a good start from pole position was firmly over around Las Vegas tonight. It was no longer wet like it was on Friday night for Saturday night. It was bone dry, but it was cold, and I do feel that that probably played a part in this. Now, if you watched the video going over the fast facts in the build-up to this Grand Prix that we produced earlier in the week, then you'll know that this is the second shortest run down to turn 1, the first braking zone of the circuit on the calendar. The only one that's shorter is Baku in Azerbaijan. But despite that, Lando Norris got a poor start, or maybe it was Max Verstappen getting a great start. It was kind of hard to tell, really, to be honest with you. Either way, Max was faster than Lando. Lando chopped across really aggressively on Max Verstappen. You know, Max Verstappen has a reputation for doing that, but I think Lando really probably pushed the boat out a little bit more than even what Max does normally. But either way, it was all good, at least for Max anyway. But for Lando, doing that and then trying to get back to the racing line, trying to pick his braking point after doing that, after that fear came down him, because he would have known that Max was going for P1 at that point. He missed his braking point, he went wide. Max Verstappen swept through into the lead, no problem for him whatsoever, and he also allowed George Russell through into P2. The pair of them battled down the first sector, but George Russell had the racing line and he was going to keep it, and he kept P2 as a result. Now, Lando Norris later in the race, he did recover, he did overtake George Russell partway through the Grand Prix, and he was chasing down Max Verstappen in the closing stages of the race. However, a message came on the radio: you need to lift and coast, you need to take it easy in these closing stages of the Grand Prix. Thankfully, he had a big gap to George Russell behind. Max Verstappen ended up winning comfortably, more on him very soon, but Lando Norris finished in P2, a very distant P2. Now, when this did happen, I know this is extremely long first point, but trust me, it is very, very important for this Grand Prix. At the time, it did seem as though the reason for this was probably something to do with brakes. Maybe it was something to do with the engine. After all, Lando Norris had an engine issue at the Dutch Grand Prix. Maybe he's got less components. Maybe the components that he's got for his power unit are a bit more worn down. However, I think this is something else entirely, and I will talk about that at the end. That will be in point 5 right at the end of this video. But yeah, second thing we learned, Max Verstappen got the win, gets that championship gap down. He's still in the hunt for his 5th world title in a row. And again, given the big kahuna, the big decision that we're all going to talk, given the big decision that we're all talking about right now, that championship gap could be even lower. It could be even lower than what it already is. I will get into that again at the end, guys. Don't worry. But what about Oscar Piastri? What happened to him? Well, he had quite a difficult day overall, I would say. He started in P5 and then he was hit by Liam Lawson going into the first corner, and therefore he lost a few positions as a result of that. Gabriel Bortoleto, by the way, another big crash for him going into turn 1. But yeah, very tricky on that first braking zone. Again, because it's very cold in Las Vegas, you know, this time of year. So a lot of these guys, especially the more inexperienced drivers such as Lawson, such as Bortoleto, just missed the braking point. Simple as that. There's no malice in it. They just made a pure mistake, as you'd expect from an inexperienced driver. But it did affect Piastri quite a bit. However, he climbed up to P4 by the end, was not that far behind George Russell eventually once all things shook out. So did a really good job, in my opinion, to get up to there by that. But unfortunately for Piastri, the disadvantage, the deficit he has to his teammate at the time of recording, let me stress that, is larger than what it was before. It has gone up, unfortunately, for him. And that does mean that if things stand the way they are right now at the time of recording, I can't stress that enough, because that could all change, trust me. That would mean that if the gap does not come down in Qatar, that Piastri will lose the World Championship and Lando Norris will be World Champion before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But again, that can all change. The fourth thing that we learned is that Kimi Antonelli had an incredible Grand Prix. If I had a hat, sir, I would take it off to you. If I had a capello, that's the Italian word for hat, I do believe, I would take it off for you, signore. Because he was absolutely incredible today. Now, he was out of qualifying in Now, he was out of qualifying in Q1, did not have a good day at all on Friday night. Not the only big drive to start all the way at the back. Sir Lewis Hamilton did the same thing. Didn't quite have the same level of fortune as what Antonelli did because his pace was absolutely electric. It was incredible. He got a 5-second penalty off the start as well for jumping the start. And even though he had that penalty applied at the end of the Grand Prix, he finished in P5, which is absolutely commendable. Only 2 places behind his teammate George Russell. But could it be just 1 place behind his teammate George Russell? Could Mercedes get a double podium? Now, you might be thinking, if you've not seen the news, George, what are you talking about? This Grand Prix has already been run. All the results are finalised. It's already happened. Get with the times, man. No, they are not finalised. I was going to talk about Ferrari for my final point, but instead I need to talk about McLaren because they've been naughty boys. Well, not really naughty boys. I think they've just messed up, basically. They have been called into the stewards, and at time of recording, they are still in there debating a potential double disqualification for Lando Norris and for Oscar Piastri. Why? Their planks were worn down too much. This has been confirmed by the race officials. That is why they're in there. Now, obviously, we've talked about the planks quite a bit in these Formula 1 cars. We've seen a disqualification for it this year. Sir Lewis Hamilton got disqualified from the Chinese Grand Prix for exactly the same thing. Essentially, if your plank is worn down too much, this little piece of material on the underside of the car, if that is worn down too much, you are running your car too low. Therefore, it is deemed to be dangerous, and also it is deemed to be you getting an unfair advantage compared to the competition. It was found that both Lando Norris's and Oscar Piastri's cars did have too much wear on the plank. And the normal penalty for this is a disqualification, as we saw with Hamilton in China, as we saw with Hamilton and Leclerc at the US GP in 2023. And the penalty for such is always a disqualification. It's a slam dunk. So if it's proven that their planks have worn down by that much, and it is proven that there is no mitigating circumstances, and even if there are some other mitigating circumstances, it's unlikely, it means that McLaren will be disqualified, both of them. And that changes the results massively. And I'm going to get into depth about how that changes things so much in a separate video for you guys, because this has gone on way longer than what it normally does. I normally do these reviews in like 5 minutes. This is going to be nearly 10. But yeah, it changes everything, and it very much inserts Max Verstappen into that title fight once again if this does happen. If they do get thrown out, because Max would be level on points with Oscar Piastri in second place, and he'd be 24 points, I believe, behind Lando Norris. And just to call back to what I said before as well, I believe the reason why Lando Norris was told to slow down, nothing to do with any engine components, nothing to do with the brakes, down to the plank. You know, if you go slower, especially with these cars, with these ground effect cars, with the porpoising, they will hit the floor less and therefore wear down less. But it appears to have not worked. They're in big trouble. Now, they haven't done this maliciously. This is an honest mistake, I think. They've just messed up here. It happens. It seemed as though McLaren got a pretty good 2nd and 4th place at the Las Vegas Grand Prix on Saturday night, but something very much is potentially going to kibosh that. That is not going to happen if this regulation is adhered to when it comes to wearing down the plank of both of their cars. They are both, as I am recording this, in the steward's room now. It's been a couple of hours. This is absolutely massive, because anybody that knows the rules when it comes to Formula 1, when it comes to the plank, will know that the standard protocol for a plank being worn down too much is disqualification. We saw this earlier this season. Sir Lewis Hamilton got disqualified from the Chinese Grand Prix for this exact reason. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc back in the US GP in 2023 was disqualified from this. This is a rule that's been around for a very, very long time. But why are McLaren in trouble? Why are they almost certainly going to be thrown out of the Las Vegas Grand Prix? And what does this mean for the World Championship? Because this, like I said, changes everything. If you saw my race review coming out at the same time pretty much as this video, it changes absolutely everything. Let's go into it. So first of all, let's have a look at the official documentation that has been released by the FIA and Formula 1 regarding what the stewards are doing. I'll put it on the screen so you can read it yourself, but I will also read it out if in case you are listening to this instead of watching. The skid wear of cars numbers 81, Oscar Piastri, and 04, Lando Norris, was checked. The rearmost skid was measured on both cars according to the team's legality documents submission in accordance with Technical Directive 39M, Item 1.2bi. The measurement thickness was less than 9mm on both cars, which is the minimum thickness required by TR Article 3.5.9e. I am referring this matters to the stewards for their consideration, and that is from Joe Bauer, the FIA Formula One technical delegate, the guy basically who gets involved with all the technical sides of the Formula One cars, just to make sure they are all above board. It's not just the plank that they check, it's everything. They check everything in their scrutiny, and they are very, very thorough, just to make sure that the cars are legal. Things like having the minimum weight or higher than that, also providing a sufficient fuel sample as well from that. It's used for all that sort of things, right? Now, the plank, for you guys who are uninitiated, the plank effectively, it's basically a material on the underside of the car. It looks like a wooden plank. It's not made from wood, but it looks like a wooden piece of material on the underside of the car, and that basically is measured in terms of how much it gets worn down. If it is less than 9mm thick on the back of the car, on the very rear of that device, then it is illegal. You can't have it less than that. Now, you might be wondering, well, why? What is the rationale behind this? Well, it's all to do with aerodynamics, right? Especially in this era of ground effect cars. See, around tracks like Las Vegas and also Singapore, Jeddah, Qatar, you'll see in Qatar in a week's time as well, particularly the night races. You can see in the day races too, of course, but particularly during the night races, you'll see a lot of sparks flying up from the cars, and the reason for this is because the cars bottom out at high speed. That effectively means that the force of aerodynamic pressure on top of the car is so much that it actually pushes the car into the ground, creates a lot of downforce, and also because of that, it does actually mean that the car does hit the floor, hits the road, as it were, as well. The lower the cars run, the less aerodynamic drag they will actually have, because their front profile will be smaller. Compare, for example, just to show you an extreme example, a large truck, right? That creates far more drag than an average road car, partly because of the large profile that it has in front of it. It has a much bigger front-facing area, effectively, right? That's what it is. And Formula One is the same. They want to make sure that there is the least amount of aerodynamic drag as possible, particularly around a street circuit where it's very quick, like Las Vegas. If you produce less drags down the straights, then you'll be faster. You'll be able to overtake more easily as well. But of course, if you run your car too low, it is unsafe. And also, you gain too much performance advantage. Again, similar thing to that is the minimum weight. If your car is under the minimum weight, there is less mass to be able to accelerate, decelerate, and corner. Therefore, if a car weighs less, then it will also be faster in theory, which is illegal. It's meant to be a level playing field in Formula One, and you got to draw the line somewhere. Bit of engineering speak there for you guys. I hope that all made sense. I've probably explained that about 20 times here on the channel over the years, but yeah, I mean, it's a slam dunk. I mean, some people might call foul. They'll be like, oh my God, they're trying to engineer Max Verstappen to be in this championship fight. They're trying to create the drama for Netflix and Drive to Survive. Oh, get real, man. Shut up. Like, this is black and white. If those cars, I should say, if they are too wore down with the planks, then they should get thrown out. They should be disqualified. And I say that as a diehard McLaren fan, right? I don't want to see them get thrown out, but they've broke the rules. If this is true, they've broke the rules. They haven't done so on purpose. I am not accusing them, before anybody says it, I'm not accusing them of cheating on purpose. They haven't. They're not stupid. They're not idiots. They'll know that if they do this on purpose, they'll get caught every single time. But for whatever reason, they've messed up. They've blown this. Simple as that. They've just miscalculated this. All the other 9 teams didn't miscalculate this. McLaren have just made an honest mistake here, and they're going to suffer the consequences of it. And the thing is, the reason why it's massive is because, like I said, this absolutely puts Max Verstappen back in the frame for a championship charge here. I mean, obviously you won on Saturday night in Las Vegas, but if they are both thrown out, if Piastri and Lando Norris are thrown out and their points are expunged, right? That means that Max Verstappen is on That means that Max Verstappen is on equal points with Oscar Piastri, and he is 24 points, I believe, behind Lando Norris. I mean, it's still a long shot. It's almost a race win. But my God, he's back in this fight. I wrote him off. I've wrote him off twice. I wrote him off in Spain And he also wrote him off after Brazil, the previous round as well. But who the hell would have thought the McLaren would get a double DSQ in Las Vegas? I didn't. Nobody did. McLaren certainly didn't. So yeah, that is why, guys, essentially, then it changes absolutely everything. That cannot be overstated. So Max Verstappen would obviously stay as the winner of the Grand Prix. George Russell would move up to second. It'd be a double podium for Mercedes. Kimi Antonelli from nearly the back of the grid to third, it'd be at that point. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, fourth, great recovery drive from him. Carlos Sainz, after a great qualifying, would move up to fifth. Isaac Hadjar for the Racing Bulls, some good points for him in sixth. Nico Hülkenberg, Sauber, he's not scored points in a while, Hülkenberg, I don't think, so it's great to see him back up there in seventh. Sir Lewis Hamilton would move to eighth for Ferrari. Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman would move to the bottom of the points. Double points for Haas, that would be 9th and 10th for the American cars in one of their 3 home races. But yeah, and in typical fashion, while I was editing that video, the decision has come now. They are officially both disqualified. Piastri and Norris out of the race. All of people behind them move up positions as a result. I'll put the official note on the screen here for you guys so you can see it, but the main reason for the decision is here. The rear skids of car 4 were measured and found to be below the minimum thickness of 9mm specified under Article 3.5.9 of the technical regulations. The relevant measurements were right hand side front 8.88 millimeters, right hand side rear 8.93 millimeters, and the measurement device was found to be accurate. So it's only just below the 9 millimeters that you need. However, it is below that line. The line has to be drawn somewhere, so therefore Lando was disqualified. And interestingly for Oscar Piastri, it was exactly the same. Right hand side front 8.88 millimeters and right hand side rear 8.93 millimeters as well. So yeah, there we go, guys. Absolutely massive. Like I said, shakes up the championship no end. We go to Qatar and it's all to play for. All bets are off after Las Vegas. See you soon, guys.